Simpson with Ether Automation, and in this video, I'm going to continue on with our manufacturer's ERP build inside Zoho Creator. So in the last video, we synced in purchase orders and sales orders. In this video, we're going to be doing some push of purchase orders and shipments. So the system is likely to want to generate some purchase orders if you don't have inventory to fulfill a sales order. So we're going to have it generate some purchase orders and have those purchase orders pushed into Zoho Inventory, as well as create a function to push a shipment into Zoho Inventory. The triggering of these functions are going to be set up in a later video, but in this video, we're just going to be pushing that data over. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and hopefully it's the right screen. Otherwise, this will be a short video. Okay, so I'm inside Zoho Creator, and I'm going to go to the purchase order tab that we've created in a previous video. And I've created a purchase order to use during this video. So we've got purchase order 9999. We've got a vendor. There's no Zoho Inventory ID. I can open this one up. I can click edit, and I can see it's in draft. We've got 99 of this item. We may trigger this by switching it from draft to issued at a later date, but right now this is what the data looks like. So I'm going to make a standalone function, and we're going to plug the standalone function somewhere else in the application in a little later video. But in this one, I'm going to just start with the standalone function. So I'll go into workflows, into functions, create a new function, and we'll call this one push purchase order to Zoho Inventory. We're going to leave it in the default. The return type will be void, but the arguments, we're going to have this be a PO ID, and we're going to make this a int. I'm going to create a function. So we've got our function, and we want to start with defining what we want this function to do. So first thing we want to do is get the PO from creator. And then we want to check to make sure we're not making duplicates. So check to make sure the PO isn't already in Zoho Inventory. Then we want to create a PO in Zoho Inventory. And this PO, there's three things, we'll say four things that are required to have a PO actually created. First one is the PO number. Second one is the vendor ID. Third one is the line items. And the line items is going to be a list. And in that list, we need the item ID and the quantity. Once we've created that in Zoho Inventory, we want to close out the function by updating the PO in creator with Zoho Inventory ID. That's the whole thing. It's real simple. So we'll start by getting the purchase order as a fetch. Then we're going to check to see if this already exists. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to check the field. So if purchase order dot Zoho Inventory POID equals, say it's empty, we want to return the function. And click save. There we go. So once we have this purchase order, we want to create the purchase order object in that will be sent to Zoho Inventory. Purchase order map equals map. And in this purchase order map, we know we need a couple things. The first one is the purchase order number. The next one is the vendor ID. And then the last thing is the line items. The line items is going to be a list of objects. So we're going to do a for each loop. Before we do the for each loop, we're going to make a list. So line items list. And that's going to plunk in here. And we want to add items to that list. So we're going to go for each record, purchase order dot line items. Then we're going to create a line item map. And then within that line item, we want to have two things in there. One is the item ID, and the other one is the quantity. So at its core, this is all we need in order to push the purchase order across. There are some other things that you may want to push across, like the dates or other stuff, but we're not going to look at that in this video. We're just going to show you how you do this as a code concept. So let's start out with the purchase order number. Number, let's get the vendor ID. So purchase order dot vendor dot ID. And then for each line item, we want to add the item dot. And if we look at the purchase order, got line items, which is a product. And then because that's a lookup field, we can do some interesting stuff. We're going to go to products. And there's a Zoho Inventory product ID. So line item dot product dot inventory ID. There we go. And we want to do the same thing with the quantity. Finally, we want to add this line item to the list. Click save. So this should be the object that gets pushed over to Zoho Inventory as a purchase order. So I'm going to drag in the invoke URL. We're going to call this create PO. It is a post. I'm going to copy the link for the URL, and this comes from the API documentation. I'm going to use the connection that I made in a previous video. There is going to be headers. I'm just going to put in headers, and the parameters is this purchase order map. Now, in a previous video, I had a organization ID. I don't remember what it is, so I'm going to cut here and grab that ID. There we go. So we have the organization ID in here. Now we have this headers as a headers object. So we're going to need to make that as well. And headers will almost always have content type as application JSON. So we're going to want to define that super quickly here. And there we go. So we have our content type in here, our application JSON. And then finally, we want to update the PO with the purchase order ID. So this purchase order is this one right here. Purchase order dot Zoho Inventory PO ID equals, and it's going to be this create PO dot get purchase order dot get purchase order ID. That's basically it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to info this create the PO, just so we can double check. I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to go and get the ID of this purchase order. And if you don't know this, you can middle click this button here, and this is the ID. So I am going to plunk it in and click execute, put in the PO. That makes sense. We want to do if it's equal to null, not whatever I had before. Boom. JSON not well formed. Perfect. I'm glad I could see this, show this as an example. Sometimes, for whatever reason, in Zoho Deluge, this will happen. The solution is just to put dots to string on your parameters. I don't know why this is the case, but sometimes it just puts it in the URL. Let's execute again, paste, submit. There we go. A couple minutes of dealing with the wrong keys, the wrong variables there, and it works. So if I go into Zoho Inventory, click refresh, I can see here is my purchase order. Here's the amount. It's 99. It's for this test vendor. You can put in your rates, but you can also set the rate on the inventory side. And then within inventory, if I refresh, or within Creator, if I refresh this page, boom, here we are. We've got that purchase order ID. So this function will be used at a later date when we are generating POs based on available inventory to fulfill on a sales order or work order. So the same process can be applied to shipments. When a shipment is ready to go, you can push that up to Zoho Inventory. I'm not going to cover that on this video because it's mostly the same concept. There's a couple of things that are different, but if you can do it with a purchase order, probably do it with a shipment. So I'm going to add that after this video, and then we'll be ready for the next video, which is where we're going to start automating some of the work orders, some of the purchase orders being created, some of the actual automation. Now that we have information coming into the system and information being put out of the system, we can now do things inside the system that are interesting. So I hope you found this video helpful. I will see you in the next video.